Let's lay out 100 new vines for our vineyard. Hello, and welcome back to Paradise Ranch, where we're building the Gavilan Hills Vineyard. This is chapter 2, part 2, where we're putting in 100 new vines up behind the gazebo here. And we will be laying out and spacing out exactly how many vines we're going to be putting in. The layout, how far we're going to space them apart, I need to figure this out so that I can prepare and set up the entire vineyard. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be adding 100 new vines to our vineyard. We're going to be putting in 50 Grenache Blanc and 50 Chenin Blanc. We did some research, and both of these vines are very well suited for our hotter, drier environment here. Plus, we'll be putting them on 1103P rootstock, which is also drought tolerant rootstock. So we're going to be putting in 50 of each one of those vines behind me here. Now I've got room on the hill here for actually 100 vines, a little over 100 vines. But we're going to be putting in only 45 of each one of these vines. I'm going to save 5 Grenache and 5 Chenin Blanc and put it in my new raised garden, because if I lose one of the vines later on in the year, and by end of next year, if I have vines that didn't make it, then I'll have some vines that I can move around and actually fill out the whole vineyard. One of the other things I ordered from the supplier was an additional 25 Cabernet Sauvignon vines. So in the mix of what we're planting here, I'm going to be adding another 10 Cabernet Sauvignon vines along with the 100 I'm putting in for the other 2 vines. As you can see here, my rows are not going to be straight. I'm going to be using the fence, the white fence along the side, and the rows actually follow the fence. So my rows are not straight, which is the primary reason why we're using the string and the stakes to stake out where the rows are going to be. Now the rows are 5 feet apart. Each row is 5 feet, and the vines themselves will be 6 feet apart. Now the difference between what I did previously with the other 200 vines and these vines are that the posts are actually going to be 30 feet apart as opposed to 25 feet apart that I did with the other set of vines. The reason the posts are 30 feet apart, it just worked out better in the rows, plus that gives me 5 vines in between each post. And just as I talked about in the previous video, we're using wood stakes. I actually am using the same set of yellow string that I used when I put in the first 200 vines, so I kept the string. It's essentially just wood stakes and some yellow string that allows me to lay out the vineyard. If you look at this section through here, we can see we've got a lot of mulch. This mulch was left over from when we had this tree trimmed, and as they were trimming the tree, they just chipped up the wood and the leaves and left them right here in this pile for me. So we're going to be working around the mulch, but I'm going to need the mulch when we start planting our vines. The vines have gone dormant and gone to sleep. It's getting a little cold around here. These are the 4-inch posts that we use when we put in the first 200 vines. And once we get ready to start digging the post holes, we're going to be digging the post holes for these stakes here, and we'll be putting again the same 4-inch posts in the ground. Once we put the posts in the ground and get those set, then we'll put guide wires that come down from these posts to support the end post, much like we did before. but we'll be changing up how we do those wires, and we'll talk about that in later chapters. When we start doing the other posts, we'll be using the same landscape timbers as we did before. We'll be following the same pattern and procedures that we used when we were putting in the first 200 vines. We'll be using concrete, 4x4 end posts, the landscape timbers, putting in the trellis wire after we dig the holes for the vines. So we've got things pretty much laid out and ready to go. Now we're going to be getting some rain over the next 3 or 4 days, which is really going to help because we're going to be able to use the post hole digger on that soft dirt next week, and it's going to do a lot better job than if it was really hard and dry. So to wrap this up, it was just fairly simple. We're not changing much from what we did before, except we're putting guide wires on the end posts. We set the string, we set the stakes out. We know exactly how many vines we can get in. We already ordered the vines. Vines should be here at the end of February, so things are going along just fine. Next week we'll be digging the posts and going on to the next phase of the project. As you can see, my vines have gone a little dormant and gone to sleep, which is cool. In about 6 weeks we'll be trimming the vines and pruning these vines back for the bud break in March. We're very glad you joined us. Please follow along, hit subscribe, and hit the bell so you know when we have new videos coming out. The next step will be digging posts. So until next time, this is Jeff. We're out.